All right, John, mailbag time. Very simple. Here's what you do. You leave us a review on iTunes, Middlecoff, and in that review, you leave a question.
These are our people, guy. These are our people in the reviews. They keep food on our table.
That's right. We would love for you to put your real name, just because I don't look at these until we're about to do it, and I stumble all over everybody's screen names.
I know.
But here we go.
When people say food on their table, like the super rich guys mean like steak, I just mean like a Chipotle bowl.
Yeah, we're not asking for much here.
No, I mean a cheeseburger.
Cheeseburger. AJ in NorCal. Great show. First, Sledgehammer intro took the pod from good to great. I'm glad you like it. It's probably going to have to go soon.
Do you think we can call someone to see, like Simmons did with Pearl Jam?
I don't know. I'm guessing the Ringer still has to pay like ASCAP fees or whatever all that stuff is.
Yeah.
I don't know if Peter Gabriel is A, still with us, and B, a sports fan, but we could reach out.
If they find out in like 3 years and we're 10 times bigger than we are now, could they sue us for like the last 5 years?
For the backlog? I think they probably could. We'd have to probably remove that stuff.
Okay.
The day you left 95.7 was a sad day for me as an avid listener. I started listening less once Papa left. It was all over. Way to not retain talent. Silly. See, this is why I don't read these until they're here, because I like finding out what is said with you and everybody together. Here's the question. With Wentz and Darnold worth a 1, how much is Mariota worth? His contract's affordable, I think, with 2 years left. And the historic play, he's way better than Darnold. Couldn't the Raiders get a solid defender or a decent pick for Mariota? Pod is awesome. Keep it up. Thank you, AJ and NorCal.
Could they just do a player-for-player swap?
Yeah,
would that benefit Cruz more? Could you just get like a solid linebacker or like a DB that a team doesn't want? Maybe.
We always talk about nickel corners when it comes to player-for-player swaps for some reason. Maybe they're undervalued players, but
they're not anymore
once upon a
because
time.
A nickel corner is a starting corner. I don't know. You see DJ, as in Daniel Jeremiah, thought that the Wentz compensation would be like a second or third this year and the 1 would be next year.
Interesting.
So, and I don't think he's just throwing that out there. I do wonder, we've been in the Bay Area for a while, and it was just for a 10-year run, just, the buy or the seller had so much control. Like you would try to buy a home or a condo or whatever, and there would be 50 people at the line. So the seller was just like, it's on like Donkey Kong, right? I'm going to pick who's buying it. The number's going to go way higher. It's the opposite for Carson Wentz. Like the buyers are in control. Howie, who is a great negotiator and a great wheeler and dealer, he just doesn't have the leverage, right? And I think that's what's kind of bugging them, is because they have this asset that they spent a lot on, but he's a distressed asset. Like he's not viewed at, and they still might get a first-round pick like next year or whatever, but if you would have said 3 years ago you trade Carson Wentz, we would have been talking like, what are they getting, like 3 1s and 2 2s or something?
Right.
So it's probably, once you really start hearing what your guy's worth to other teams, I do wonder if it's a little jolting, right?
There are a lot of the Bay Area market, right? There's a lot of sales that happen in homes with no contingencies. Like there are people who are buying homes, just it's so competitive, they're just waiving the right to do an inspection. The problem for the Eagles is everyone has the inspection paperwork on Carson Wentz, and it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, it happened to me, guy. I got bent over when I
it's just it's the nature, but it's not. To your point, that's a great analogy for Carson. It's just not the situation they're in. Now that said, to AJ's question, historically, yes, Mariota's had some better play than Darnold for sure. I don't think he gets you more than Darnold, which is why I like the idea of a player. Because if we're talking about a pick, he's asking what's the decent pick. I think we talked about it before. I don't think you're getting better than a 4th. For him. So,
yeah.
Right? 4, is that where we settled?
Kind of feels like that, yeah.
Okay. Next up. Good question, AJ. Thank you. This is from B-Ra. I listen to a lot of Fox Sports media, especially Cowherd, on the road to recovery. Trent Dilfer is a frequent interview across many shows. In war, there are those troops that carry regret because they survived and their brothers didn't. I can tell Dilfer doesn't truly think he deserves his ring because that defense carried his team. So is the 2000 Ravens repeatable? NFL's so different than then. You fellas are great. There's a lot going on in this mailbag question.
I don't get that much with Trent on the ring. I've listened to him talk a lot. I'm sure many people have because he's on a lot of these type shows with Russillo, Coward, or whatever. I sense his regret was when his physical talent was special because he kind of came in high pick, that he got thrust on this shitty team. He was around low level coaches, and by the time he always talks about like Holmgren, and once he got around like really good coaches, he was so much older and he kind of broke down. I do think his physical gifts, throwing the ball, and his love of football, his regret is more, at least from my opinion, just listen to him talk, in the early mid-'90s when he was this physically talented player, he was on the equivalent of, I mean, I don't even know if there probably is one really in the NFL right now of like, what a joke. It'd be like probably like the Timberwolves or something, the Kings.
Talking about the Bucks.
Decade. Yeah.
Yeah. Steve Young was like, Steve Young said, get me out of here. Right.
There's not a Bucks in the NFL right now. Would you agree with that? Like Stafford was with the Lions and he had success.
Yeah. No, I agree.
The Browns and the Raiders.
Everyone's so much richer now too, right? From a team standpoint.
So you can buy coaches that are better.
So I completely agree with you. I haven't thought of it in these terms, but I don't think I've never talked to a player who feels like they won a ring they didn't deserve ever. I've never gotten that sense from a player, and I don't get that from Dilfer. I think what you do get a lot is what you just said. And we did a podcast the other day, and afterwards I made a video for LinkedIn, John, just because I was like, let's try a LinkedIn video about Brady. It was rave reviews. It's been all over the internet. Not really. But the point was like, what's different about Brady, like for anyone that doesn't do a job that requires you to be in your physical peak to do it well, which is almost all the jobs, your prime is not 32. Right? Your prime's like 45, 50, 55. When you really know everything that it takes to know to do your job at the peak, to be in total control of your environment and to be totally locked in, to have control of the operating room or the courtroom or the podcast or whatever you're doing. You're not in your prime at 30.
Well, you're going to be better salesman at 50 than you were 30. You're going to know more people.
The problem with athletics is that you don't, by the time you know everything that like puts you at the top of the like mental pyramid, your body can't keep up with you. And that's what makes Brady so unique is like he extended this window where his body is taking advantage of the things that I would bet Dilfer would say, yeah, at 42, I felt like I knew a lot of the things maybe that Tom knows, just the physical part of Tom. And you pointed this out the other day after the Super Bowl. It's like, we don't talk enough about just Tom, the football player, right? And this was part of what I was thinking is like Tom's arm strength is very good. It's part of what makes him different than Breeze and Rivers and Manning at the end of his career is that his arm strength is so much better than those guys' arm strength was at the end of their careers.
It's why Rodgers could have a pretty good next 5 or 6 years.
I think you're spot on with and I think this you get from players all the time. It's like, man, I wish I knew at 28 what I knew at 35 when it was too late for me to take advantage of it. So I'm with you. Now to the other part of the question, is it repeatable? I mean, it's an outlier. I don't think it's for as much as we talk about quarterback play, I don't think it's not repeatable to a degree. What would we be saying about the Niners if they had won the Super Bowl last year and then had the same exact year this year? We'd be going like, it turned out Jimmy was not the strength of that team.
Yeah, I think what's different is, I mean, Ray Lewis is one of the probably top 2 or 3 linebackers of all time. They got, Rod Woodson on that team. I don't think Ed was on it yet. Dion was on that team. I just think the league has changed a little bit.
Oh, you're right. Ed won the next. Yeah.
He came in like 02 or whatever, but maybe 01. I just, I mean, I don't think it's inconceivable. I mean, teams that win have great defenses. I think what separates them is that they were led by the defensive player of the year who's an all-time great player. Is Fred Warner that, or I guess the Bucks weren't really this year. I think if you have a great defense, you have a chance to win a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Ed came in 02 and they won that Super Bowl in 2000. Good question, B-Raw. Appreciate you. Anytime we can get a war crossover.
Well, I think what was pretty special about the Ravens is like they had that great defense. Think about some of their picks the next like 4 or 5 years. Ed Reed, Haloti Ngata, Terrell Suggs. Like what made them great is they reloaded and they nailed. Are those 3 Hall of Fame? I mean, Ed's a Hall of Famer. Haloti and Suggs are going to be in the mix. I mean, that's a pretty good run of like, well, how'd you replace Sam Adams? Oh, we got this guy named Haloti. What'd you do with what'd you do a pass rusher? Oh, we got this guy named Terrell Suggs. I mean, it's just pretty unreal run.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the fact that, Ray was still around 12 years later when they won the Super Bowl again, 12 years later. Ben the Great. Hey, guys, big fan of the pod. Been listening for years. Kyle's a good coach, and his ability to scheme plays is top-notch, but what are your thoughts on his offensive scheming getting in the way of the success of the offense? Seems like he's so locked in on getting a player that fits his scheme, pocket passer that stays on script, that when QBs play a little schoolyard type, he shuts that down. If he gets a player like Watson or Zach Wilson, do you think he'll get them create, extend plays, or will he try to mold them into his beloved Kirk Cousins? Well, we just talked about it with Juszczyk, actually, on the podcast, right? Kyle brought it up. He's like, look at what he did with RG3. When you asked him, like, what is his offense? Kyle's answer was his offense is whatever his players are. But this gets back to this question, which is, okay, well, what's his quarterback? I don't think he would try to mold Zach Wilson into Kirk Cousins or Deshaun Watson into Kirk Cousins, though.
Yeah, I think somewhat that question is unanswered because the consistency beside the one RG3 year, and I think looking back, that it's been proven that was forced on them, and they did what they had to do to survive, and it turns out they were so good
and thrived. They made them the rookie of the year.
And yeah, they survived and thrived. But I think these next couple years, how they pivot off Jimmy this offseason will tell us a lot. I don't know if we can answer that question yet.
Because someone DM'd me the other day, Kittle down the middle was the guy's handle, and he asked a similar question. So you're right, it is something that people are asking a lot.
Like I think people and they use Andy as an example. He's had 25 years of being a head coach and all those different, Donovan to Alex to Michael Vick to Mahomes, right? You just go, oh yeah, he'll do whatever. Kyle right now is viewed as like, yeah, he wants Cousins.
Yeah. All right, next up. This is from A. Perdomo. When will we get an Al Davis versus the NFL breakdown? Did you watch that 30 for 30 last week?
I watched probably the last 20 minutes.
I watched it. I loved it. I know some people were the deep fake Al Davis and what's his name? Pete Rozelle was weird. I was convinced the deep fake Pete Rozelle. I was like, who does this sound like? And then the next morning I woke up and it hit me. He sounded like George Steinbrenner from Seinfeld when Larry David's doing Steinbrenner. That's who the fake Pete Rozelle sounded like. I loved the whole thing though. It was great. I'll tell you my favorite part, but how about you? What did you think of what you saw?
Well, I just watched the last part when he basically LA didn't come through on their promises. The thing, Al didn't have any money, yet he kept dictating all these terms to whether it was Oakland or LA. It wouldn't even be possible now. I mean, Mark somewhat did that, but the league, he was in cahoots with the league. What was separate is Al was like this renegade trying to do all this shit. The league was fucking didn't want him to do it. He didn't have any money. And the league, you just watch it. God, the league didn't have the money.
Yeah.
It was a profitable endeavor, but what they are now relative, I say all the time, the Brady Manning are the Bird and Magic of our era or of my lifetime for football. And like Bird and Magic, the NBA in like the 60s and 70s wasn't some ching, 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 ching. Bird and Magic was like rocket ship. And then Michael just took that rocket ship and landed it on the moon.
To the moon.
Brady and Manning, kind of like you just watch clips of the NFL in like the 80s, and it feels more like a mom and pop shop is unfair, but it's much closer to a mom and pop shop than what they are now.
Well, them playing a game on ice. How about that game? Raider fans will remember better. Oh, you probably didn't see that part. There was one.
I didn't see it.
Al is pissed at the league because they made them play like a playoff game. The field was iced over. Like I don't know if it was I don't think it was the Super Bowl, but it must have been a big playoff game.
Like the Chiefs or someone or Denver.
It was iced over. The field was iced. And they were a more wide open offense. It really hurt them. They were not ground and pound. Two other things that I loved. One, did you see the part? I don't remember the name of the town. There was a town after Al was mad at the Coliseum in L.A. or the Rose Bowl. Some town gave him a $10 million non-refundable check to like move 15 miles outside of L.A. The town's name is like, I don't even know.
San Bernardino or something?
Yeah. Just say the town's name was Jonestown. Jonestown gives him $10 million non-refundable. So he's like, yeah, I'm coming. And then the voiceover's like, you've never heard of the Jonestown Raiders, so you know what's about to happen. And of course, Al kept the money, but whatever. They took a shot. It was non-refundable. They gave him $10 million. He had every right to keep it.
And he didn't move.
He didn't move, but who knows why it fell apart. But they had a big sign on the highway that said, Jonestown, the new home of the Raiders, but they never got there. Then the other part, he's suing the league. The Chargers owner is like his sworn enemy. The Chargers owner goes into court, and Al thinks
is this before the Spanos family had owned the Chargers?
Yes, yeah. This guy goes into court, and Al thinks this guy's a liar, like besmirching his name, just a complete liar. The guy leaving the courtroom has a heart attack and has to be ambulanced to the hospital.
The owner.
So Al has to talk to the media and on one hand be like, I think this guy's a piece of shit. And on the other hand be like, but thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. I saw the part, him and Rozelle hated each other, right? Like
yeah.
When Pete retires, and when he's retiring, he's in tears. And you realize, like, the guy's walking away from the commissioner of the NFL. And I wonder if it was a little bit like you got in as an early startup and you see where everything's trending and how big this is going to – was he forced out? Did he retire on his own volition? I didn't know what was – that's kind of how I come in. And Al, they go to Al, and he gave him a lot of props. He's like, listen, we've been warriors and in this like battle zone for a while, but I respect this tenacity a little bit like the way Donald and Hillary talked about each other, right? They like had this ultimate respect, like Hillary was just Donald would always talk about Hillary like she was a bulldog because she is like I wouldn't fuck with Hillary Clinton, and a little bit like Rozelle and Al, they were kind of two peas in a pod, just on different ends of the spectrum.
Rozelle,
because Al was at the West, representing the West Coast, but at the end of the day, he's a New York guy, and he kind of brings that fucking crazy edge to him.
And Pete Rozelle had to hand him a trophy like 3 times. And there was the one scene where they're like, the players are catcalling, like they are talking shit to Rozelle. And the story apparently is that like the players were going to pull a prank on Rozelle. And the key was going to be if Al said, "Thank you, Commissioner," when he took the trophy, then that's the signal that the prank is off. So they show it. Like Pete hands him the trophy and Al's just quiet. And the players like, whoa, they're making noise. Like, and Al's just waiting. And then he says, "Thank you, Commissioner." And that means the prank is off. I don't know what they were going to do, but all right. Next mailbag question comes from, we did B-Raw. We did age in NorCal. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here. Bill in Charlottesville. Awesome job, guys. Keep it coming. Fan since radio, now living in Virginia. Don't want to have to kill your boy Andy, but with a patchwork offensive line at some point, don't you have to move outside the pocket, get Mahomes outside intentionally, or keep more tight ends, not Kelsey, in? Tough spot, but bad game for Andy? No? Question mark?
I would say his one fatal flaw as a great coach is he's going to go down passing the ball. It's just what he does, who he is. And it's probably at the end of the day, like it is a separating factor, maybe why he doesn't have 2 or 3 Super Bowls, and he has 1, and maybe his career he'll end up with 2, right, instead of like 4 or 5. Where Belichick is like a stock trader who is completely numb to the products. I mean, he does not care. His game plan is irrelevant what happened the previous week. Like he's not tied to a scheme. He's not tied to a play. Andy is tied to throwing. And like they busted a couple runs in that play. They're not built to help the tackles blocking, right? Kelsey is not Kittle or Gronk. That's not his thing. And he's their best pass catcher, really, right? He
was in that game. He had a great game.
Yeah, so it's a tough spot for him. If you want to crush him, I would just say probably going to lose anyway with that. Once you just watch the offensive line, probably should have attempted to run the ball, 30 times?
Yeah,
but I thought coaches say it gets hard when you get down. Though.
Yeah, see, I thought, they came out running the ball in the second half. I didn't think they could afford to. I did think not getting rid of the ball fast. Like, it did feel like every play they were trying to take a 25-yard shot as opposed to just –
the West Coast offense that I think Andy was known as in, like, the 90s, like Favre and Holmgren, the West Coast offense, that's in the trash. If you watch the Chiefs, they don't – you could argue they were just fucked the moment their tackles are out. Like, that's just,
I think you
for
could
them, it'd be like, Steph and Clay are out. You're going to lose.
Peppa is 6 feet tall with our last question here. Big fan of the show. Do you know what that means?
No.
Big fan of the show. Do you guys think Justin Herbert can be the guy that breaks the Chargers' curse and wins them a Super Bowl? Plus, what's his ceiling? I mean, their team's really good. I don't think he can break the curse if his coach isn't good, though.
Which is a pretty big unknown.
But I mean, at this point, you'd have to say, how could you not think that he's good enough to do it? But you'd like to see him get close soon before he gets really expensive because the talent around him is pretty high. They got a good team. Problem is they're in the AFC. But yeah, short answer, yes. I think he's good enough.
I think the standards are going to be pretty high this year. Like they're going to be probably a sexy playoff pick, right? Their roster is really good. He's on that rookie contract. I think these next two years are big for the guy's career because you can build the team around him, right? Because he doesn't make that much money, maybe even 3. You don't have to pay him after his 3rd year. I think his ceiling is sky high. Probably not Mahomes, but it's as high as anyone if Mahomes had never lived. Like part of it is like, well, not Mahomes. Yeah, that's just throw him in the tree. Like Mahomes is his own little category. Can he be a Pro Bowler for the next 5 years? 100%. And if you have a Pro Bowl quarterback every year and your team is talented like theirs is, why can't you make a run? But this is a coaching league as much as a talent league, and they're hiring a guy that was in John Carroll in 2016. So it's just we'll see.
Second highest ceiling in the league right now?
I mean, Josh Allen's got to be pretty high, right?
Yep.
Justin's
better as a rookie than Josh Allen was.
The pushback I'd have is just Justin didn't have to win any games to get any credit this year. Like he was losing them all, but it wasn't his fault. But
that's a great
what
point.
happens in a tie game, Raiders, and they're both 6-2.
Stadium.
Right?
He hasn't played in front of crowds yet in the NFL, really. That's something.
A lot of guys though had good seasons, but at least like Rodgers threw 48 touchdowns. Like I know he can.
Yeah, but I've seen him do it before.
Yeah.
All right, good mailbag, everybody. Appreciate you
that
guys
is something
submitting.
That is something to keep an eye on, though. Even
Big
like
time.
Josh Allen, Herbert, Carr.
Yep.
Had big bounce back years, and it was maybe Carson Wentz thrives with the fans.
Maybe
That's what Koepka says. He just says
Maybe
I
he's
get
a
a little more.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It's a good call.
I'm serious.
No, I know you are. I think it applies in every sport. I think it applied in baseball. I think it's applying in basketball. So I think it'll apply in football too.
What's the little guy's name in Altuve? Maybe Altuve just had a down year. It wasn't the trash cans, it was the people.
Great call. All right. On that note, give us more mailbag questions for next week, everybody. Later.